What happens when a woman who dedicated her life to a company suddenly becomes dead weight in the eyes of her own family? At a ceremony meant to celebrate achievements, she was humiliated in front of everyone. But you won't believe how she responded, and who ended up losing everything. My name is Linda Carmichael, and until recently I was the vice president of operations for the company I helped build for almost 20 years. Yes, I'm the outdated person that was written about in reports and recounted in cigarette lounges. Except no one mentioned who spent nights in the office when the server went down, or who manually pulled out a client with $1 million contract while young geniuses were running for a new logo. I arrived at the office that morning with a box of fresh buns. Change? Maybe. But I've done it every Monday ever since our first shop was housed in a rented hangar. And even though half the staff had long since been replaced by guys in sneakers and iPads, I kept bringing in those buns. Because people, damn it, aren't signs on doors. It's attention, memory, and the smell of cinnamon in the boardroom. But that Monday, the cinnamon clearly wasn't saving the day. I already sensed something was wrong when the security guard at the front desk suddenly looked right through me, as if I were a ghost from the past. Then I got a call from my assistant saying there was an emergency meeting. Right now. No explanation. Just don't forget your name tag or the system won't let you into the conference room. The fucking system. I walked into a room full of people I'd had coffee with, fought over budgets, and laughed at stupid corporate jokes. And there's Jessica on stage. My sister-in-law. Former marketer with the voice from the toothpaste commercials. Now a newly minted CEO. The crown jewel of digital transformation and the board's favorite. Strict suit, clipboard, strained smile. And a lawyer by her side. Just like the Best Layoff of the Year awards. Friends, she began, today is an important day. We are moving into a new era of leadership. I sat down. My jaw tensed. The buns in my lap began to lose their warm steam. And as part of the renewal of the structure, she continued, we are saying goodbye to a number of staff whose skills, alas, no longer match the strategy of the future. Not aligned, yeah. I was already anticipating my name being called. I just wish it hadn't been over a round of applause. Linda Carmichael, she finally said. We thank you for your years of service. You leave with honors, full compensation, and a chance to rest. I stood up. Slowly. As if from a swamp. I looked around the room. Not one look. Not one. Are you serious? I asked. I was the originator of this business. And I'm being tossed out like an irrelevant brochure? That's the board's decision, she replied as if she were reading a check. No, Jessica. It's a decision of your complexes, I said and put the buns on the stand. They're fresh. Like a memory you don't have left. And I left. When I left the gym, my hands weren't shaking with shame. They were shaking with anger. But you know what the ironic part is? No one ran after me. Not a single person I'd shared business trips, late-night deadlines, and gas station coffee with. These people sat there as if I were a phantom, a mistake in a PowerPoint that no one wanted to notice. I got in my car and drove home, but instead of the radio I turned on silence. She was the best at commenting on what was going on. On the way, I stopped at the pharmacy for painkillers, not for my body, but for the feeling of being kicked to the curb without warning. The clerk asked, "How's your day going?" I almost laughed in his face. "Swell," I said. I had just been dismissed from my own life. At home, I took off my shoes, the same heeled shoes I'd worn to my first investor presentation 15 years ago. Threw them in the corner. Then I sat in the kitchen staring at the tiles. Have you ever talked to Tile? I have. She doesn't answer. But she listens. That night my son called. The one who married Jessica. Mom, it's business. Don't take it personally. Take what personally? I questioned you. The fact that your wife made me look like an outdated fax machine in front of the entire office? Am I supposed to take that as a compliment? He stopped talking. Just don't make it worse, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, I snorted. I didn't realize that being fired without warning was me aggravating. You probably haven't looked in the dictionary in a while. He hung up, and I pulled out an old box of business cards. There were names of people who really appreciated my work. Sam from Atlanta, Maria from Seattle. People I was building something real with, not just chasing metrics. I wrote them letters. Not tearful, no. Brief. Direct. I told them I was available for counseling, not because I need to, but because I can, because experience doesn't get scrapped like expired milk. The next morning I went to the market. I bought the most colorful tulips. I went back to the office, and you know what? I didn't hide. I put those flowers in the lobby. No card. Let them think. Let them itch. And then I went to my favorite coffee shop. The barista, a guy with a hedgehog haircut, recognized me. "You've been gone a long time. How's it going?" "Oh, fine," I smiled. "My own sister-in-law fired me. I am now officially irrelevant. Can I get a double espresso with a drop of contempt?" He laughed, and I felt like I was still breathing, because if you can make jokes, you haven't lost yet. A couple days later, I got a call from Rhonda, a former coworker with whom we had once run our first production line together. "Linda," she said cautiously, "I heard that you're retired. If by retired you mean thrown out of your life in public to the applause of the new guys, then yes. Retired. You know, they say you wanted out, that you handed it over on your own, that you were tired." I literally choked on a gloating laugh. "Of course you did. Tell them I organized a fireworks display to celebrate my departure." "I'm sorry." "No, Rhonda. I'm sorry you're repeating their fairy tales like it's a weather report. We had a story. Now we have a press release." I hung up. Any vestiges of hope that anyone in that office would tell the truth crumbled like a house of cards. Later I went out to the park. Just to breathe. There were a couple of women my age sitting by the fountain. Judging by their clothes, they were the kind of women who think floral print saves them from a recession. But they recognized me. "You're the one who got fired, right?" One of them asked. "Are you the one who still reads other people's lives on Facebook?" She was embarrassed but remained seated. "I'm sorry. It's just, everyone's talking about it. That you were removed because you didn't fit the new format." "The new format," I repeated. "Apparently it's where brains are replaced by glossy presentations and experience is replaced by likes on LinkedIn posts." They fell silent. And I walked away. Because if people judge you by your enemy's version of you, there's nothing to talk to them about. When I got home, I looked at the mirror in the hallway. There was a woman there. Not broken. Tired, yes. Wounded, yes. But not destroyed. I smiled at her. "Hello, old girl. Looks like it's time to remember who you really are." I was sitting on the veranda, a cup of strong black coffee in my hand. On the table was a printout of my post, scrawled with marker notes. I reread it aloud like an incantation. Steel in my voice. Fire in my heart. And then I realized they thought they'd fired me. But what they'd really done was set me free. I was no longer part of their show. I was my own writer. No corporate filters. No other people's decisions. No dead smiles at the buzzer. Just me. My words. My experience. My anger finally in the right direction. And that's when, for the first time in ages, I didn't just exhale, I laughed. Loudly. Heartily. Because sometimes to get back to yourself you have to be thrown to the curb. And then the phone rang. I didn't answer it. I just watched the screen flicker and thought, so didn't we wait? What happened next changed everything. Subscribe and stay, you don't want to miss how it unfolded. 2 days after that very well-deserved exit, I discovered that my office keys no longer worked. I just stood in front of the glass door with a tea bag in one hand and a "what the hell is going on" face, and heard the security guard downstairs radio in, "Carmichael's out front." "Yeah, again." "Again? That's nice. Have they made me an urban legend yet? Maybe we should get t-shirts printed." I went up to the front desk, hoping to at least pick up my personal belongings. The girl behind the counter I'd helped get settled a couple years ago avoided my gaze as if I was now radioactive. "Jessica said all your stuff will be delivered to you by courier," she whispered. "A courier? What about the guards escorting me to the coffee shop?" I didn't get an answer. I turned around and left. But on the way I noticed that my photo had already been taken down from the board of directors' wall. They work fast. Almost like a military coup. When I got home, I sat down with my laptop and thought, why not? I wasn't going to sit idly by. You want to turn me into a ghost? I'd have to deal with a poltergeist. I started writing. Stories. Comments. I plugged into a few forums for women 50 plus where they discuss careers, ageism, family betrayals. After a couple days, my writing started getting reposted. People wrote, "You're saying what we don't say." And one woman called my post, "a digital spit in the face of young hypocrites." I smiled. Not for nothing then. But that's when the next wave began. My third-floor neighbor, the one who used to bow to me at the supermarket, suddenly didn't say hello. My sister-in-law's friend wrote on Facebook, "Some people don't know how to leave with dignity." Dignity, yeah. Especially if dignity means being a convenient statistic at your own execution. And then Jessica called. I wasn't expecting it. Her voice was as soft as boiled broccoli. "Linda," she began, "you realize we're just following the zeitgeist. This isn't personal." "Of course it is," I replied. "Just carving alive. Purely professional. You're spreading toxic information online. It could affect the company's reputation. Are you afraid the truth is toxic? So you're allergic to facts over there?" She went silent. Then exhaled. "You're still family." "Oh yeah, I can really feel it. Especially when I was crossed off as a line item in the budget." We ended the conversation the way you end a spoiled sauce, poured it down the sink. No regrets. The next day I received a notice. The company was officially removing me from all consulting status. Even from things I hadn't asked for. All in the name of brand protection. My brand, for that matter, smells like cinnamon and principles. Their brand smells like a cheap ploy. And that's when it hit me. Not anger, emptiness. It was as if not only my position, but my very name had been erased in an instant. I went to the old studio where I used to do workshops for young people. I thought maybe I could talk to someone, breathe some normalcy into myself. And there's a sign that says, "Pre-registration only." I used to be the one who put up those signs. Now I'm the one they cut off. I looked at the door like a mirror. It didn't just reflect rejection. It reflected how quickly you can become unformat. I went to the coffee shop around the corner, the same one where Jessica and I used to come up with slogans for an ad campaign. Back then it seemed like the beginning of an alliance. Today it's just a shelter from the wind. There's been a change of barista. No one recognized me. Even the latte felt foreign. I sat in the corner and just stared out the window. The world kept spinning like I was never there. "Are you Linda Carmichael?" I heard a voice from the side. A woman in her 60s. Stylish, confident. A tablet in her hand, my article on the screen. "Your online column." It wasn't just a good article. It was a slap in the face. I smiled a little. "Not on the liver, I hope?" She laughed. "You're saying out loud what we're afraid to think. I was laid off last year. Restructuring. 8 words of thanks and a kick in the ass. We got to talking. Her name was Marion. She invited me to her online support group. Women 50 plus who had experienced a system reflash, as she called it. I said yes. Why not? At least it wouldn't be lonely. But the next day came a surprise. I was denied renewal of my health insurance from the company. The wording was loss of cooperation. To put it crudely, we're no longer bound by a clause or a comma. I sat at home with the envelope in my hand and thought, how quickly you are turned into a statistic. Yesterday you're the face of the company. Today you're an expense that needs to be cut. My dog Betsy looked at me reproachfully as if to say, "Is that the best you can do?" No, it wasn't. I picked up the phone and called the local college. I had lectured there 5 years ago. I was put through to the new coordinator, a girl with the voice of a vitamin commercial. "I'm sorry, but our program is now focused on youth startups. We're looking for more relevant speakers." Relevant? I interjected. You do realize that your list of relevant changes more often than the price of gasoline, right? She giggled nervously. "I'm sorry. We'll definitely consider you in the future." "Oh well, give us a call when you realize that ideas and experience aren't disposable things." I hung up. Slowly. No hysteria. But the thought was already pounding in my head. I'm being pushed from all sides. And I'm either giving up or starting to gnaw at that barrier from the inside out. I wrote a new article. This time a tough one. It's unvarnished. We've been written off because we're afraid of our reflection. It wasn't a complaint. It was a battle cry. The article went viral faster than the previous one. In the comments, women wrote that for the first time in a long time they felt heard. Marion invited me to do a webinar for their group. And I agreed. I prepared a presentation. A simple one. No animations. Just facts, statistics, and the voice of the woman who couldn't be silenced. And here I am, standing in front of the screen again. In my pajamas with a cup of coffee but with a boardroom posture. And I see more and more connections appearing on the screen. 12, 20, 50, 100. They were listening. They were taking notes. And I was talking. And I realized I'm not alone. I've never been. The evening after the webinar, I got an email from someone I didn't expect to see on my subscriber list. Mom, I watched it. It was intense. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Son. The same one who'd remained silent while his wife tossed me out of his life like an expired document. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry. I went beyond tears. There was something else, a mixture of pain and slight schadenfreude. Like someone realized what they had lost, but realized too late. And then another letter. Anonymous. You're destroying family ties for cheap popularity. I laughed. I get thrown out in public, but I'm cutting ties? That's good logic, worthy of a manipulation course. But I didn't care anymore. I realized. None of this was revenge. It's restoration. Not triumph, but getting my face back in the mirror. I was me again. Not through a title. Not through someone's last name. Through a voice. Through strength. Through something that couldn't be removed with the push of a button. I turned on the light in the room. I looked at the board where I pinned printouts of my articles, reviews, notes. My wall of truth. My new story. Unadorned but honest. And in that moment I felt it, something inside became firmer. Steadier. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without an alarm clock. Because I wasn't going to work in the morning. I was going to live. Before I went to bed, I went out on the balcony. There were no stars in the sky, nor was there any predictability in my new life. But the air was clear. No politics, no orders, no hypocritical smiles. I took a deep breath and said quietly, tomorrow will be my day. Without a name tag, without a schedule, but with dignity. Sometimes freedom doesn't look like a salute, but a silence that no one can take away. And yes, I'm still here. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Subscribe now to see the hero put everyone in their place. The morning after the webinar, I received an official email. No, it wasn't an apology. It was an invitation to a board meeting to discuss the possibility of participating in a strategic initiative, as they dignifiedly put it. Lovely. I'd been fired, stigmatized, pushed onto the internet, and now, discuss. I stared at the laptop screen and didn't know whether to laugh or call for an exorcism. Suspiciously animated. Apparently the wave I'd made had reached the shore the wrong way. I put on my best navy blue jacket, which Jessica had once called too classic. Perfect. Just what I needed, a little classic against the backdrop of the corporate circus. I parked not in the VIP spot as I'd done before, but at the entrance under the visitors only sign. A silly formality? Maybe. But she knew exactly who had arrived. In the lobby I felt dozens of stares. Some looked away. Some stared back. It was like I'd come back from the dead. Oh well. Let them get used to ghosts. Because I'm not the past. I'm their future, which they didn't include in the spreadsheets. In the boardroom, everyone was already seated. Jessica at the head of the table. Cold, impeccable with that strained "we're all adults here" smile. The lawyer on the side. 2 of the shareholders are new. The rest are old acquaintances with the same "I wish I wasn't here" look. Linda, thanks for coming. She begins. You're welcome. I love the circus. She paused for half a second. Then she continued. We want to discuss the possibility of you coming back, as part of a consulting project. We see your success in the public space and believe your voice could enhance our image. I blinked. So, you want to buy what you've been trying to destroy? The lawyer coughed. Someone dropped a pen. The atmosphere thickened. It's not like that. That's exactly what it is, I interrupted. I was kicked out the door as a non-core asset. And now you see that non-core has a voice. And an audience. We're offering you real terms. Budget, status, flexible hours. I don't need status. I have a name now. I'm up. Slowly. But firmly. I looked around at them all. Once I was afraid of losing this place. And now, they were afraid of losing me. My price is the truth. And you can't afford it. An out. without pathos, but with a feeling you can't buy with bonuses. As I walked out of the building, the sun was beating down on my face. Too bright, as if the world had decided to turn on the dramatic lighting too. I walked slowly, but a march was playing in my head. Not the anthem of victory, more like the soundtrack that sounds when one stops being afraid to be themselves. Already in the car, I opened my phone. The mail was flooded. After the webinar, and especially after the rumors of my possible reintegration. Some rejoiced, others sarcastic. There were those who openly demanded, "Come back, the system needs you." No guys, I'm not Scotch. I don't fix cracks in other people's facades. I'm taking them apart for bricks. The next morning I went to the library, the same library where I had held meetings with young entrepreneurs when I was still in status. The librarian, an elderly lady with eyes that always made more sense than council reports, suddenly said, "I read your last article. Thank you." For what? For not being silent. We all sometimes think we can be turned off with a click. And you proved that's not true. I smiled. She was right. I wasn't in the shadows anymore. And I liked it. That same week, I was invited to speak at a regional leadership conference. No thanks to Jessica. No corporate filters. Just me. A microphone. And a stage. The topic of the speech? How to keep the corporate world from erasing your last name. I wrote the speech overnight. No proofreading. No editor. Just my voice, mine alive with irony, with pain, with truth. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. And then there was a flurry of applause. And that's when I realized, it wasn't just support. It was recognition. I wasn't being returned. I was heard. A woman in her 70s came up to me in the audience. She was gray-haired, wearing a yellow jacket. She looked at me with a long look and said, "I left the company 30 years ago. I've been silent all that time. And today I felt that I had lived to this day for a reason. Those are the words that make it worth it. Not for the glory. For the truth. For one person to sit in the dark and say, I'm not broken yet." After the conference, the offers started coming in. Some called to consult, others to mentor startups. Several organizations offered to be the face of change. I laughed. I was already the face, just not of an advertising campaign, but of life's pushback. One day, flipping through my feed, I came across Jessica's post. A photo with the caption, "The strength of a team is the ability to move forward." In the comments, half with the hashtag Justice for Linda. I didn't post anything. I didn't like it. Silence is sometimes louder than a shout. A couple days later, my son called me. No excuses this time. "Mom, I get it. I do. I was blind. You didn't deserve this." "You're right," I replied calmly. "But sometimes a man has to go blind to see who's standing in front of him." He didn't say anything. And then he said, "Jessica is leaving. The council didn't renew her contract. They said she couldn't handle the company's image." I wasn't gloating. I didn't jump for joy. I just let it go. Because revenge is temporary. Self-respect is forever. I went to my workshop, the one I'd opened a couple months ago. The tables, the wood, the smell of varnish and coffee. Several women who had been through their own sat working on projects. We didn't talk about the past. We were building the future with our hands, our voices, our actions. On the wall hung a poster. "Don't ask permission to be yourself." I walked over, fixed the corner, and smiled. Because now I knew. Everything they had once tried to take away from me had turned out to be what made me stronger. And yes, the mirror no longer reflected a tired woman. It was me. The real me. No masks. No need to prove anything. And when I got another email from the council that night, with a new offer to start a dialogue, I hit delete. Not out of spite. Out of principle. 'Cause I was finally free. And freedom isn't when you're not held down. It's when you know where you're going. So I went. That night I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, but from the silence. The kind you can hear your heart pounding. I went out on the porch with a mug of herbal tea and just stared into the darkness. No streetlights, no noise, no faces. Just me and the night. And it was beautiful. I remembered everything. How I stood in that hall where I was humiliated. How I'd come back against all odds. How I spoke until my voice was hoarse. How I met women whose eyes were mirrors of my journey. How I learned to believe in myself again. And I realized I didn't just survive it all. I recycled it. Like the wood I used to make furniture out of. It was old. Now it's new. Stronger. No varnish. But honest. I looked up at the sky. Where before there were only clouds, a star suddenly flashed. The smallest. But one of my own. I took a sip. And I said, "Thank you for crossing me off. It was the most precious gift of my life." And then I turned around and went inside. With the door closed but with an open heart. I woke up early this morning. Not from the alarm clock but from inner peace. There was no need to check email, wait for calls, or wonder who would write what in the comments. All of that was out of the picture. I wasn't looking for approval anymore. In the kitchen, I turned on the radio, the old jazz wave. And for the first time in a long time, I just made breakfast for myself, not on the run, not on a schedule, not on a pattern. Just because I wanted to. Betsy looked at me, tail wagging as if she too sensed. There was a person living here now who belonged to herself. I sat down at my desk, opened my notebook and wrote the first line of the new book. This is the story of how one woman refused to be a shadow. And it was true. I was no longer in a hurry, because it was all on my terms now. And that meant more than any regalia. I didn't win, I stopped fighting. And that was my strength.